I've also been looking at the DA. The DA is also in that vicinity of being a 30-something% type of party.
Yeah.
So from a democratic perspective, we are now firmly in the place where we know for sure that nobody is guaranteed the governorship of any of these metros, certainly in Gauteng. The last thing I want to point out here, because I heard one of the spokespersons of these major parties speaking to say that they are expecting to win 3 metros. The only metro that seems to be firmly in the hands of the African National Congress at this point in time is Buffalo City.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everywhere else, there's been a dramatic bloodletting. It's a bloodbath for the African National Congress. The DA, you need to be more careful with their statistics. There are some statistics that are looking a little bit better than they could have been as we speak right now.
All right, so is there an explanation for this?
Sure. Yes, there is an explanation, and it is that the electorate have gotten tired of the ANC's continuously promises. I mean, look, they ran on it. Cyril Ramaphosa ran on a campaign to say, we're sorry.
Yeah.
We've done a bad job. Please give us another chance. I mean, it was an admittance of a long history of taking people for granted, essentially, and having an ANC that had I call it the sins of incumbency.
Yeah.
You know, the arrogance of power. So this is caught up with the ANC. And we can see it from the previous elections, both national and local, and it's an inexorable, as Sandile said, it's an inexorable movement towards, and it's in some ways it's a healthy one, because I don't think we would want to have a situation where 27 years after democracy, the ANC was getting 70 to 80% of the vote.
I mean, those numbers, I mean, I'm looking at 33%, African National Congress, Johannesburg, Swana. I'm not even sure that a lot of people can process that. But what's going to start to now play out is how does the coalition play? Because before the EFF were the kingmakers on their own, but now we have a whole group of others, Action SA, even the Freedom Front Plus now, who are now going to be part of a new equation.
Yes, I mean, it's a new ball game that I am trying to toss in my own mind as to what this is telling us. But from history, very recent history, the EFF made very good friends with Herman Mashaba.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised that when you approach Herman Mashaba for a partnership, you'd find him hugging the EFF, or when you approach the EFF, you would find Herman Mashaba hugging them. And also the DA, in an interesting way, when I started to read some of the pronouncements by Steenhuisen, they've come up with some social program now, some kind of social capitalism that they've learned in Germany or something of the kind. So the issue that was causing friction, which is the social welfare or the spreading out of the wealth and redistribution of wealth, etc., into the poorer areas of Johannesburg and the metros, I think parties are going to start to find common ground around that. Whether it will be around the ANC or around the DA, it's an open question.
Last time around, there was this coming together against the ANC. That was the common thing, that they almost forgot all their differences and they said, listen, we have one party that we want to get rid of, so will it be different this time around?
Yes, power does strange things to parties, and the search for power does strange things.
Yeah.
And once you get a little taste of it, I think people, I mean, if you listen to Julius Malema the other day, he basically said, we will not go into coalitions with anybody who don't agree with every single thing we have in our manifesto. Of course, that's not a particularly realistic thing. But I think what's going to have to happen, what I would see that one of the really positive outcomes of this is it's going to force political parties to become politically more mature, to actually seek common ground, to seek those areas, because if they don't, and if they hung these councils, and if we are 3 or 4 months down the road, and we've got a Swana and a Joburg and a Nelson Mandela that are in complete chaos, citizens are going to erupt. in different kinds of ways. And I don't think any of us would want to see that. And I don't think political parties, they would lose even more support. So, yeah.
A question for both of you, because we've got differences of opinion in terms of coalition politics. Can they deliver for the citizens, or do they end up being very focused on the internals, the surviving of each particular party, rather than actually what can be done for citizens? And I wonder what your take is on that. This is our second lap now of coalitions, particularly in these big metros. Will we do a better job this time, do you think?
Yeah, we have a very good chance of doing a better job, and I think it's something we need to focus on straight away. First of all, you will remember that the Mapungubwe Institute has published a book on how to run these coalitions properly, comparing internationally and so on. So there is a book on the table on this. Two, I've been told that by tomorrow, SALGA will be publishing their own guidelines on how coalitions should be run. Thirdly, I received an article written by Terry Tselane coaching on some of the issues of how coalitions should be run. So there are certain very credible researchers, and the last one was done by Professor Ndletyana, evaluating, among others, the coalition, for instance, in PE, that when the DA was running the coalition, the actual performance of that coalition was actually very good. And part of his conclusions was that it was the disruptive activities of the African National Congress itself that actually caused chaos in PE and poor performance.
All right, so it will be interesting because, I mean, some of these parties are so far apart. We have the EFF saying taking of land without compensation, Democratic Alliance. On the complete other side of that spectrum, how do these two come together, if at all?
Well, I think they're going to have to look also at some international examples. I was mentioning the other day what is going on in Germany at the moment, where nobody won a majority in the national elections, and you have the Greens, you have the Social and the Conservatives all trying to get together. And what that requires is it requires horse trading, it requires compromise, it requires sitting down and working through a proper program. The parties haven't done that in many different ways. So I think in whether it's Nelson Mandela, whether it's Joburg, and we also, the other little factor here is on that sheet, almost 10% are independents. Independents have gotten almost 10%. They're the other wild card. So I think in some ways it's going to be a very wild ride after this on these 35 hung councils. But here it is. Here's a test for our democracy, our maturity. Can we meet it? Can the parties step up to the plate? I think that's the question.
All right, gentlemen, we'll continue to explore this because I think there could be an upside to this, and that could be that corruption might be the victim here. That because there's so many people in the kitchen, it'll be very hard to steal. So maybe we'll get a win through that, but we'll discuss that a little bit more later. But first now we cross to senior political reporter Samkele